Have you ever felt like anxiety controls you, trapping you in an endless cycle of worries and doubts? It's a feeling so many of us share, being caught in a relentless loop of overthinking, imagining worst-case scenarios, and feeling powerless against the tide of anxious thoughts. But what if I told you there's an ancient teaching that holds the key to breaking free from anxiety once and for all? In the next few minutes, you'll discover how a simple yet profound lesson from the Buddha has helped millions of people calm their minds, find inner peace, and regain control over their emotions. Stay with me, because by the end of this discussion, you'll have a tool that can truly transform your life, allowing anxiety to become a distant memory rather than a daily struggle. Anxiety is one of the most common emotions experienced in modern life. It follows us everywhere, in our daily routines, at work, in relationships, and even during moments of rest when we should feel at ease. It's that nagging feeling that something is wrong or could go wrong, accompanied by racing thoughts, tightness in the chest, and a mind that refuses to quiet down. The demands of modern life often exacerbate anxiety. The constant pressure to succeed, the bombardment of information through social media, and the uncertainties of the world can easily lead to feelings of being overwhelmed. For some, anxiety is a persistent companion, lurking in the background of every thought and action. For others, it may strike in sudden, intense episodes that leave them feeling drained and fearful. But here's the thing. Anxiety doesn't have to control your life. It doesn't have to dominate your thoughts or steal your peace of mind. And this is not just wishful thinking. For over 2,500 years, the Buddha taught that suffering, including anxiety, is something we can learn to manage and eventually overcome. His teachings provide a timeless framework for understanding the mind and gaining mastery over our emotional experiences. In Buddhist philosophy, suffering is seen as an inherent part of the human experience. Anxiety, along with other forms of mental distress, is not viewed as a failure or weakness, but as a natural occurrence that arises from how we relate to our thoughts and experiences. The Buddha taught that our suffering often stems from attachment, aversion, and ignorance, holding on too tightly to what we desire, pushing away what we fear, and misunderstanding the true nature of reality. Anxiety often arises when we cling to specific outcomes or become overwhelmed by thoughts of what might happen in the future. We project our fears and uncertainties onto the unknown, allowing our minds to spiral into patterns of worry and unease. However, Buddhist teachings emphasize that these thoughts are just that, thoughts. They are not inherently real, nor are they permanent. The Buddha's teachings offer practical tools to address anxiety, primarily through mindfulness and meditation. Mindfulness is the practice of bringing one's attention to the present moment, observing thoughts, emotions, and sensations without judgment. By cultivating mindfulness, we can begin to recognize anxious thoughts as they arise and gently guide our focus back to the present. Meditation, particularly mindfulness meditation, helps us develop a deeper awareness of our thoughts and emotions. Through regular practice, we learn to observe our minds without becoming entangled in the narratives they create. This detachment doesn't mean ignoring our thoughts or pushing them away. Rather, it involves seeing them for what they are, fleeting mental events that do not define us. When we practice meditation consistently, we cultivate a calm and centered mind that is less reactive to anxiety-inducing thoughts. Over time, this practice can significantly reduce the frequency and intensity of anxious episodes. Another core aspect of Buddhist teachings is the principle of acceptance. Rather than resisting anxiety or trying to force it away, we learn to accept its presence without judgment. This doesn't mean resigning ourselves to feeling anxious forever. It means acknowledging that anxiety is a part of our experience, but it doesn't have to dictate our actions or our sense of well-being. Acceptance leads to letting go. When we stop fighting against our anxious thoughts and instead approach them with kindness and curiosity, their power over us diminishes. We come to realize that anxiety is not a permanent state but a passing experience that arises and falls away, like waves on the surface of a calm sea. Applying these teachings to our daily lives requires patience and persistence. Mindfulness, meditation, and acceptance are skills that grow stronger with practice. As we continue on this path, we gradually develop the ability to respond to anxiety with wisdom rather than fear. The Buddha's lesson is clear. Suffering, including anxiety, is part of life, but it is not an inescapable prison. Through mindful awareness and compassionate acceptance, we can transform anxiety from a source of suffering into a teacher that guides us toward greater clarity and peace. So, the next time you feel anxiety rising within you, remember this. You have the power to observe it, accept it, and let it pass. By embracing these teachings, anxiety can become a thing of the past. No longer a force that controls you, but a challenge you have learned to face with calm and clarity. The power to overcome anxiety lies within your mind, and in the next few minutes, you'll discover how to unlock it. But before we continue, if you're interested in learning more about how Buddhist teachings can help you live a calmer, more balanced life, consider subscribing to this channel. Here, we share meditation techniques, mindfulness practices, and ancient wisdom aimed at helping you transform your mind and find lasting inner peace. Click the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss our upcoming videos designed to improve your well-being. Buddhism offers a unique perspective on anxiety and suffering, teaching that their roots lie in attachment. This attachment is not limited to material possessions but extends to people, ideas, and even our own expectations. When we become overly attached to these aspects of life, it creates tension and suffering, especially when our desires go unmet or when we fear losing what we hold dear. Attachment can manifest in many ways. We cling to relationships, careers, or social status, believing they will bring us happiness and fulfillment. We become attached to our ideals and expectations of how life should be, leading to disappointment when reality fails to align with these mental constructs. In essence, anxiety often stems from the fear of losing something valuable or the frustration of not attaining what we deeply desire. The Buddha identified this cycle of suffering and anxiety in his foundational teaching known as the Four Noble Truths. The first truth acknowledges the presence of suffering in life, including anxiety. The second truth reveals that suffering has a cause, attachment and aversion. The third truth provides hope by stating that suffering can have an end. And finally, the fourth truth offers a path to achieve that end through mindfulness, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. Unlike many contemporary approaches that treat anxiety as something external to be battled or eliminated, Buddhism teaches that anxiety is an internal response conditioned by our minds. It's not the external events themselves that cause anxiety, but our reactions to them. When we cling to certain outcomes or resist what we find unpleasant, we create a fertile ground for anxiety to thrive. Anxiety, therefore, is deeply intertwined with attachment and aversion. We cling to what we believe will bring us joy and security while rejecting what causes discomfort and pain. This constant push and pull creates a mental state of tension and unease, perpetuating the cycle of anxiety. One of the most profound teachings in Buddhism is the concept of impermanence. Everything in life, our possessions, relationships, emotions, and even our own identities, is subject to change. Nothing remains fixed or permanent, yet our minds often cling to the illusion of permanence, believing that happiness and security can be found through acquiring and holding on to things. The anxiety we experience is often rooted in this clinging. We fear losing what we have or failing to obtain what we desire, which leads to a perpetual state of dissatisfaction and worry. This illusion of permanence keeps us trapped in a cycle of craving and aversion, where anxiety thrives. However, understanding and embracing impermanence can be incredibly liberating. When we accept that all things are in a constant state of flux, we can begin to let go of our attachments. This doesn't mean abandoning everything we care about, but rather learning to relate to the world with a sense of openness and flexibility. Non-attachment, a central concept in Buddhist teachings, is not about renouncing all desires or becoming indifferent to life's pleasures. Instead, it's about cultivating a healthy relationship with the world, one that is not dominated by fear, craving, or rigid expectations. When we practice non-attachment, we learn to appreciate life's experiences without becoming overly dependent on them for our happiness. We recognize that pleasure and pain, success and failure, joy and sorrow are all part of the natural ebb and flow of existence. By acknowledging this truth, we can approach life with greater equanimity and resilience. Anxiety begins to lose its power when we shift our mindset away from clinging and towards acceptance. We see our thoughts and emotions as passing phenomena rather than fixed realities. This awareness allows us to respond to anxiety with wisdom and compassion rather than resistance or fear. Understanding the origin of anxiety according to Buddhism provides a powerful framework for healing. By recognizing how attachment fuels our worries and how impermanence offers a path to freedom, we can begin to dismantle the mental patterns that keep us stuck in anxiety. Incorporating mindfulness, meditation, and the practice of non-attachment into your daily life can lead to profound transformation. As you continue on this journey, you'll find that anxiety is not an enemy to be conquered, but a teacher that can guide you toward greater clarity, peace, and understanding. Now that you have a deeper understanding of the origin of anxiety from a Buddhist perspective, you can begin to apply these teachings to your own life. Through patience, practice, and a willingness to let go, you can break free from the grip of anxiety and discover the lasting peace that lies within. In today's lesson, we're going to delve into how the thoughts and emotions that fuel our anxiety are products of our own minds, and how embracing a new way of thinking can help us find freedom. By living according to the Buddha's teachings, we can gradually release ourselves from the grip of anxiety and discover lasting peace. Understanding the source of anxiety, one of the most powerful insights from Buddhism is the recognition that suffering, including anxiety, is not something imposed upon us by external circumstances. Instead, it is a creation of our own minds. The Buddha taught that our mind is the primary source of either well-being or suffering. In this sense, anxiety is not an unavoidable affliction thrust upon us by the world, but a reflection of our relationship with our own thoughts, emotions, and desires. The way we perceive the world and respond to our experiences determines whether we feel peaceful or anxious. If we change how we relate to the world and ourselves, our experience of anxiety changes as well. This transformative shift begins by understanding how our thoughts and emotions contribute to our suffering. A fundamental teaching in Buddhism for freeing oneself from anxiety is the practice of non-attachment. This concept is based on the idea that excessive attachment to objects, people, emotions, or thoughts generates suffering. We often cling to what we believe will bring us happiness or security, only to be disappointed when reality doesn't meet our expectations. Non-attachment doesn't mean abandoning everything you care about or living a detached, emotionless life. Instead, it's about cultivating a mind that remains open and flexible, free from the constant need to control or cling to what cannot be controlled. It's about embracing life as it is, without the mental chains of rigid desires or fears. Rather than fighting against anxiety or trying to eliminate it entirely, non-attachment encourages us to observe it, understand it, and ultimately free ourselves from its grip. This approach allows us to relate to our thoughts and emotions in a more balanced and compassionate way, rather than being swept away by them. To better understand this teaching, let's explore how anxiety arises from a Buddhist perspective. The Buddha taught that the root cause of suffering, and by extension anxiety, is tanha, a term often translated as craving or thirst. This craving manifests as an insatiable desire for pleasure, security, or permanence, and a corresponding aversion to pain, discomfort, or loss. We are driven by this craving to constantly seek out what makes us feel safe and comfortable while avoiding anything that causes pain or discomfort. However, the world is always changing. The things we desire or fear are often beyond our control. This reality creates a cycle of dissatisfaction and anxiety. When we obtain what we want, we fear losing it. When we fail to get what we desire, we feel frustration, disappointment, or despair. This cycle is perpetuated by the illusion of permanence. We cling to objects, relationships, ideas, and even our own identities, believing that they can provide lasting happiness or security. Yet everything is subject to change, decay, and eventual loss. Our attachment to these transient aspects of life only leads to further suffering and anxiety. The key to breaking this cycle lies in embracing the Buddhist concept of impermanence. Everything in life is in a constant state of flux. Our thoughts, emotions, relationships, and possessions are all temporary. Understanding and accepting this truth can be incredibly liberating. When we come to terms with the reality of impermanence, we begin to let go of our desperate attempts to control or cling to what is ultimately beyond our grasp. This doesn't mean giving up on life or resigning ourselves to suffering. Instead, it means approaching life with a sense of openness, fluidity, and acceptance. By seeing life through the lens of impermanence, we can approach each moment with clarity and wisdom. We learn to appreciate what we have without clinging to it, and to face challenges without becoming overwhelmed by them. This shift in perspective allows us to experience life more fully and freely, without the constant undercurrent of anxiety. Another essential aspect of overcoming anxiety from a Buddhist standpoint is the practice of mindfulness. Through mindfulness meditation, we learn to observe our thoughts and emotions without becoming entangled in them. We recognize that thoughts of fear, doubt, and anxiety are just that, thoughts. They arise and pass away like clouds drifting across the sky. Acceptance also plays a crucial role. Instead of resisting anxiety or trying to force it away, we learn to coexist with it, understanding that it is part of the human experience. By meeting anxiety with compassion and awareness, we gradually loosen its hold over our minds. Living the Buddha's teachings requires patience, practice, and dedication. By embracing non-attachment, understanding impermanence, and cultivating mindfulness, we can free ourselves from the patterns of thought that fuel anxiety. As you continue on this path, remember that healing is a gradual process. Anxiety may not disappear overnight, but with persistence and compassion, you can transform your relationship with it. Rather than being a force that controls your life, anxiety can become a valuable teacher that guides you toward greater peace, clarity, and freedom. This approach doesn't just reduce anxiety, it transforms your entire way of living, allowing you to face life's uncertainties with wisdom and grace. In Buddhism, everything in the world, including our thoughts and emotions, is in constant flux. Nothing lasts forever. Anxiety often arises when we cling to the belief that something must be permanent, whether it's an emotional state, a relationship, or a particular life situation. When we accept that all things are transient, including our own thoughts and emotions, we begin to free ourselves from the suffering that anxiety creates. A practical way to apply non-attachment to anxiety is through the practice of non-judgmental observation. This involves observing our thoughts and emotions as if they were clouds passing across the sky. Clouds come and go, just as anxious thoughts do. We don't need to cling to them, battle them, or identify with them. When an anxious thought arises, we can acknowledge it without reacting. Simply observe it and let it pass like a cloud drifting away. Beyond non-judgmental observation, the Buddha taught several practices to help us free ourselves from anxiety, with one of the most effective being mindfulness meditation. Mindfulness trains us to be fully present in the current moment, rather than being pulled away by worries about the future or regrets about the past. Anxiety often thrives on what-if scenarios and worst-case thinking, rather than focusing on what is actually happening right now. Mindfulness brings us back to the present, where most of our fears have no real foundation. By grounding ourselves in the now, we can break free from the relentless cycle of anxious thoughts. Mindfulness meditation often begins with something as simple as conscious breathing. By focusing on the breath, we establish a point of stability amid the swirling thoughts in our minds. This simple act of attention helps us distance ourselves from distracting, anxious thoughts, allowing us to see them more clearly for what they are: fleeting, temporary, and not necessarily reflective of reality. By embracing the Buddhist teaching of impermanence and practicing mindfulness, we gradually loosen the grip anxiety has on our minds. This approach doesn't eliminate anxious thoughts but changes our relationship with them. We learn to observe them, accept their impermanence, and release them without clinging or fear. Incorporating these teachings into daily life allows us to face anxiety with a sense of calm and clarity. Through consistent practice, we find that anxiety no longer controls us. Instead, we develop the wisdom and resilience to navigate life's challenges with peace and presence. The Buddha taught that focusing on the breath helps calm the mind and brings it back to the present moment. Every conscious inhale and exhale strengthens our ability to stay grounded, preventing us from being swept away by anxiety. How does this work in everyday life? Imagine feeling overwhelmed by anxiety, perhaps due to work stress or a difficult conversation. Your mind fills with thoughts like, what if this goes wrong? Or what if I can't handle it? Instead of allowing these thoughts to dominate, you pause and bring your attention to your breath. You inhale deeply and exhale slowly. In doing so, you realize those anxious thoughts are just that, thoughts. They do not define your reality unless you choose to empower them. Breathing creates a mental space between you and your thoughts, allowing you to respond with clarity rather than react out of fear. This simple act of mindfulness can be transformative, offering a sense of control even in challenging moments. Another key teaching for overcoming anxiety is compassion, not only for others but also for yourself. Anxiety often intensifies when we are harsh with ourselves, blaming ourselves for feeling anxious or for not handling situations perfectly. The Buddha emphasized that compassion is one of the most powerful tools for transforming the mind and heart. Practicing self-compassion means treating yourself with kindness and understanding, acknowledging that anxiety is a natural part of the human experience. When you allow yourself to feel without judgment, you create a space for healing and growth. Self-compassion frees you from guilt and self-criticism, fostering an inner environment that is more conducive to peace and resilience. So, how can you integrate these teachings into your daily life? The answer lies in consistent practice. This process is not about achieving instant change, but rather making small, intentional efforts each day to cultivate a calmer mind. Begin by dedicating a few minutes each morning to conscious breathing. Sit quietly and observe your breath as it flows in and out. Throughout the day, gently remind yourself that anxious thoughts are like passing clouds. They come and go, and you don't need to cling to them. Over time, you will develop the ability to let go of anxiety more easily and live with greater ease and clarity. By embracing mindfulness and self-compassion, you can transform your relationship with anxiety. Rather than being overwhelmed by fear and doubt, you learn to face life's uncertainties with courage and kindness. With consistent practice, these techniques will become second nature. While anxious thoughts may still arise, they will no longer have the same power over you. Instead of being a force that controls your life, anxiety becomes a signal, a reminder to return to your practice and find balance once again. Your mind grows stronger, more resilient, and better equipped to navigate life's inevitable uncertainties. The Buddha's teachings for freeing yourself from anxiety are not about quick fixes or eliminating all negative thoughts. Rather, they involve a gradual process of inner transformation. Through understanding key principles like attachment, impermanence, non-judgmental observation, mindfulness, and self-compassion, you begin to dismantle the mental patterns that keep you trapped in anxiety. When we cling to desires, expectations, or rigid beliefs, we create tension and suffering. By embracing impermanence and letting go of attachments, we allow ourselves to experience life with greater ease and flexibility. Non-judgmental observation helps us view anxious thoughts and emotions as passing phenomena rather than absolute truths. Instead of fighting against them or identifying with them, we simply observe them and let them go. Mindfulness teaches us to anchor ourselves in the present moment, breaking the cycle of worry and fear rooted in hypothetical future scenarios. It allows us to respond to anxiety with awareness and clarity rather than impulsive reactions. Self-compassion, meanwhile, softens our approach toward ourselves, helping us to embrace our imperfections and fears with kindness rather than criticism. By integrating these teachings into daily life, we not only reduce anxiety but also cultivate a freer, clearer mind, one capable of facing life's challenges with calmness and serenity. Meditation is one of Buddhism's most powerful tools for reducing anxiety. Through meditation, you calm the mind and develop the ability to observe your thoughts with detachment, without letting them dominate you. This practice helps you reshape your relationship with anxiety, transforming it from a daunting enemy into a manageable experience. The meditation technique described here is based on two foundational principles: conscious breathing and non-judgmental observation. These are essential pillars in Buddhist practice and are especially useful for calming an anxious mind. The goal isn't to make anxious thoughts disappear, but to change your relationship with them, learning to observe them calmly instead of reacting impulsively. How to practice? Find a quiet place. Choose a peaceful environment where you can sit comfortably. A chair, cushion, or even lying down is fine, as long as you can relax without falling asleep. Focus on your breath. Begin by directing your attention to your breath. Inhale deeply through your nose, feeling your lungs expand. Exhale slowly through your mouth, releasing tension with each breath. Allow your breathing to settle into a natural, steady rhythm. Observe thoughts like passing clouds. As you breathe, thoughts will inevitably arise. Rather than trying to suppress them, acknowledge their presence without judgment. Visualize them as clouds drifting across the sky, coming and going on their own. Practice self-compassion. Anxiety often leads to self-criticism or frustration. Instead, approach your thoughts with kindness and understanding. Remind yourself that feeling anxious is a natural part of life and not a personal failing. Return to your breath. Whenever you feel your mind becoming overwhelmed by anxious thoughts, gently guide your focus back to your breath. This process of returning your attention builds resilience and strengthens your mindfulness practice. Meditation is most effective when practiced consistently. Even dedicating just a few minutes each day to mindful breathing can make a significant difference. As you continue this practice, you'll find that your relationship with anxiety begins to shift. Instead of being overwhelmed by it, you develop the capacity to observe it with calmness and clarity. Over time, these teachings and practices will transform your mind, helping you face life's challenges with serenity and wisdom. By incorporating mindfulness, meditation, and self-compassion into your daily life, you cultivate an inner peace that remains steady even amid life's inevitable storms. When anxiety feels overwhelming, gently remind yourself that it's okay to feel this way. Return to your breath whenever you get distracted. It serves as your anchor to the present moment. With consistent practice, you'll find that anxiety gradually loses its grip. You'll develop a stronger, more resilient mind capable of facing challenges with clarity and calmness. Meditation and mindfulness are powerful practices, but their true value emerges when applied beyond formal sessions. The real transformation occurs when you incorporate these teachings into everyday situations where anxiety arises. Here are some practical strategies. Mindfulness in daily activities. Incorporate mindfulness into simple tasks such as walking, eating, or washing dishes. By bringing your full attention to these actions, you train your mind to stay present and reduce anxious thoughts. Recognizing impermanence. When anxiety strikes, remind yourself that emotions are temporary. The phrase, "this too shall pass," can be a powerful tool to release attachment to fleeting fears. Self-compassion. Treat yourself with kindness and understanding, especially when you feel anxious. Recognize that everyone experiences anxiety, and it doesn't define you. Creating a supportive environment. Establish a meditation space at home or spend time in nature to nurture a peaceful state of mind. Your surroundings can have a profound impact on your well-being. Anxiety is a natural part of the human experience, but it doesn't have to control your life. Through mindfulness, compassion, and understanding the impermanent nature of thoughts and emotions, you can cultivate a calmer, more resilient mind. Thank you for joining me on this journey toward inner peace. If these teachings resonate with you, consider subscribing for more content on meditation, mindfulness, and Buddhist wisdom. Feel free to share your experiences in the comments. I'd love to hear how these practices have helped you. Remember, transformation takes time. But with patience and consistent practice, you will find greater peace and freedom from anxiety. Until next time, keep practicing, stay present, and nurture the calm within you.